Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Michael Guerin. I'll be the host for today's webcast about the use of AI in the field of meteorology. We have two guests with us today. First is Dr. Amy McGovern, a Lloyd G. and Joyce Austin Presidential Professor at the University of Oklahoma, who is considered the leading expert on AI in the field of meteorology. And our second guest is Matt Lanza. For those of you who are familiar with the channel, he needs no formal introduction. We've had him plenty of times. But suffice to say, he's got a great deal of expertise in the field of forecasting. So, without any further ado, the first question of the webcast will be going to Amy. And that question will be if you could please provide a short description as to how AI weather models currently operate.
Sure. Do you want the global AI weather models, which are the ones that are showing up in the news all the time, or do you want sort of the answer to that question is complicated because it depends on what models you're asking about. So,
Yeah, let's start with the global ones, the ones people are most familiar with.
yeah, so the global ones are the ones that people are seeing in the news, right? Because Google's been putting things in the news and DeepMind and ECMWF. And I'm assuming your audience is not just lost in my acronyms already. So I'm assuming your audience is meteorologists. So, AIFS is one of the big ones and it's operational. They're all working the same way. All of those are called data-driven models. And essentially, right now, all of them are training on ERA 5, which is a quarter degree resolution and about 60 years of history. And they are training basically given, the last however many days, what's the weather for the next few days? And you just do that repeatedly over all 60 or 70 years of history that are in ERA 5. And one thing that you hear is, oh, well, there's no physics in that. There isn't physics in that, but you are learning over 60 or 70 years of data to inherently mimic the physics that are existing. Are you handling the changing in the physics and the changing of the distributions? Maybe not, but you're getting that. So that they're just essentially learning to mimic that. And if you want the sort of deeper answer, I do a lot of interviews for the news stations, and one of the examples I've been giving, and it's probably way too basic for your audience, but I've been giving the example of Minecraft squares. So that Minecraft squares are, how you're representing everything. Typically in a numerical weather prediction model, you've got every little Minecraft square that's talking to every other little Minecraft square, and it has physics talking from one model to the other. And these ones aren't doing any of that. It's just looking at the picture or every pixel as a whole. And it's doing convolutions or ways to pass information from the different pixels to the other pixels um, that over time let it build these patterns that say, well, I saw this, then this is likely going to be the weather pattern that I'm likely to see. Was that the level of detail you want, or do you want more? Also, was my
Um,
video hanging for you? Because I think I got to kill a few things because it's hanging over here.
no, the video looked fine.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And I think some of our audience is on the freshman, sophomore students sometimes. So getting a Minecraft example in
Okay.
there, I think is great. I think it never hurts to be too basic sometimes.
And
Um,
the thing about Minecraft is you can visualize those cubes that you're dropping in, right? And when
yeah.
you're looking at
Hmm.
numerical weather prediction models, I like that because numerical weather prediction models, the reason they're so slow and the reason that AI is so different is that those models, every cube has to talk to every other cube that it's touching, right? And that
Right.
doesn't have to happen in the AI model. So it can take a very long time to train because you're having to process 60 or 70 years of data over and over and over again until you get really good at it. But when you're going forward, it's literally just one giant matrix that you're multiplying out a bunch of times. And so it's really fast to multiply out. And you're all of those people who play Minecraft can do that on their GPU cards on their laptops.
Right. And before we move on to the next question, Matt, just in case, is there anything you want to add to that question?
No, no, I think that pretty much that covers everything. It's funny how much different it is and how much faster everything comes in. And from a forecaster's perspective, it's awesome to have that to be able to get data a little bit quicker and to be able to have a look at it. Even though it's different than some of the global models as different output, it's still giving you an answer faster than you otherwise would have had. So I think that really as we move forward in time, this is going to increase the amount of flexibility that we have to do different things. And I think there's just kind of like so many tantalizing possibilities that kind of sit out there, given the amount of time it takes to run these things, how quick it is. So, yeah, it's very exciting.
I would add to that tantalizing possibility. One of them should be that you can do ensembles really quickly, right? So in the old days, you want to look at, I don't know, all the different realizations of Hurricane Melissa. You'd had to run one of those very slow numerical weather prediction models, and you'd be lucky if you got 10 of them, maybe 20, if you had a nice supercomputer. But now with an AI model, because the forward realization is literally just matrix multiplication, you can run 1,000 of them on your computer in a few seconds. And what do you do with 1,000 of them? That is up to you as the forecaster. I'll leave that to Matt. But you can get a lot of realizations, and the cool part of that, you can get the sort of edge cases. Like you give it different initial conditions, and you can get edge cases that you wouldn't have had the ability to look at before.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a very interesting field, at least for this for AI, at least this portion of it. There are other portions that we're not going to cover today, but so moving on to the
Yeah, and
next
there are
question.
lots of other. The part of the I asked you about the AI models is there's lots of other applications of AI to weather. That just tends to be the one that's in the news. So you want to hear about the others, you can ask about them later.
Well, if we have time, we'll circle back around to that. Um, so moving on to the next question, though. So in terms of performance, how, and this question we'll start off with Amy and then we'll move on to Matt. Um, how is AI currently impacting performance with the forecasting models, and how will AI impact forecast performance over, say, the next 5 to 10 years, especially kind of compared to your traditional numerical guidance? For example, will we see, no real improvement, just like a little improvement, or, just kind of big steps of improvement over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Those are really interesting questions, and I want to hear Matt's answer too. Uh, when the AI weather models, these global ones that we're talking about, first started coming out, I think that they were just more of a promise. But they've really broken through. The fact that ECMWF has their AIFS model operational means that people see that there's value in it. And I've heard plenty of informal stories of, oh, it's finding this faster than the typical physics-based models do. And I think that's the promise that we're going to see. I think that I wouldn't want to put a theorem on, but we were getting close to predictability on certain things that we could do with the models that we had. And I think that the AI models are going to break through that predictability barrier, which was sitting at 7 to 10 days, and bring it up a bit. Are they going to bring it to 28 days or 180 days? No, we're not going to be able to predict a tornado happening that far out in advance. It's just too much chaos. But I think that we can bring some of these larger scale processes up so we can get closer to the subseasonal to seasonal predictions, improving in scale. And I think that's one of the places where the AI models have real promise that'll happen in the next few years. And I want to hear Matt nodded. So
No,
Yeah, Matt, same.
I think that's exactly true. I think we're going to get predictability in timeframes that maybe we just didn't have before. To some extent, a lot of it is like when you're starting to look out 14 to 20 to 25 days in the forecast, like you want to ultimately what you want to do is you just want to try and get the trend right. You want to get the direction right. You
right.
want to just kind of get some sort of very high level, broad sort of thing, in terms of where things are going. You're above normal, below normal. But like if we can see, I don't know, 25 days out that there might be a significant heat wave building or a significant shot of cold air or significant weather pattern, these are all things we can start thinking about just as forecasters to start, I think raising, not necessarily raising alarm bells, but it focuses you kind of on different things that you can forecast for. So that having, just even a little bit of improvement out that far is great. Not even to think about the fact that you could, maybe potentially make significant improvement in that, almost sub-seasonal time frame of forecasting. Even if you can't predict down to the, to the various very level of what you're able to do convectively or something like that. If you can just get more color on what's coming, that just helps prepare everybody, I think, a little bit better. So I think that's a really exciting, possibility.
Right. And something I kind of want to follow up with that on. So have you noticed, I assume you work with these, fairly regularly with forecasting. Have you noticed that the AI models have seen any, if there's any market improvement between, your AI model and your regular traditional model in terms of like, an hourly forecast or synoptic level forecast, subseasonal, seasonal, et cetera? Um, and has there been any difference you've noticed, say, between a temperature forecast, a precipitation forecast, or like a tropical cyclone, or what have you? Have you noticed anything like that?
Yeah, from like a medium term perspective, like looking out days, 6 to 15, I think that the AI modeling, particularly the new ensembles that have come out, like the AIFS ensemble and things like that, those are very comparable to, the global models already. So like, you just kind of use them in conjunction with that. I don't know that I would necessarily be ready to bite on a significant outlier scenario if we saw like a major cold air outbreak on like days 12 to 15 or something on one of these. I still think we're kind of assessing the performance and the usability at that time frame. What I have been, quite frankly, floored by has been their ability in forecasting tropical systems in particular, um, especially when it comes to just operational guidance. Like, obviously we use ensembles a lot when we're talking about hurricanes and tropical storms and trying to forecast out a ways. But we look at the operational models because I think, just as a forecaster, I want to get a sense of like, are they going crazy with this system? Are they, what are they doing with it? I don't necessarily want to focus on the track so much, but I just want to get a sense of how big they're making things. So sorry about that. Um, it's like a dance party in here right now. So let me just mute my work computer.
Yeah, no, no worries.
Yeah, so but you're just looking at the operational models for that. But what's incredible about the AI models to me is how much less windshield wipering there is from run to run. It's almost like they narrow down the potential corridor and then they just stick to it. And I've noticed that in the Gulf. I've noticed that to some extent in the Atlantic, and they may not be perfect, but they're not going to drive you ballistic in terms of like trying to figure out, what's where things are going directionally. So from that perspective, I've been absolutely floored. But I'm still trying to feel it out a little bit more from a temperature and precipitation perspective. Definitely starting to use it more to try and get a sense of where things stand in days 6 to 10, 11 to 15. And there's just no question they're already comparable to the ensemble means that we get from the European model and the America the GFS model. So yeah, I mean they've already proven that they can just jump right into the game and play with the big boys. So,
I would add to that, sort of anecdotally, I did a news interview last week with a local news station, and she asked me if I was using AFSS to forecast, and I was like, well, I don't do forecasting, I do the AI development. And she said, well, I'm loving AIFS because it's finding those temperature shifts earlier than the other models. That's one person, but it is an operational forecaster, so it was an interesting story. I'm working on a benchmark suite. We call it Extreme Weather Bench. That's focusing on trying to give you answers to some of these questions so that you can have objective answers. This is how well this model worked on this set of heat waves. This is how well it worked on this set of cold snaps. And that should be released in the next couple of weeks so that you can have some of those answers and we'll be able to easily evaluate AIFS, for example.
Oh, we'll be sure to keep an eye out for that. Um,
I will be posting the paper all over social media when we're ready. We're getting close. I actually spent most of today trying to put figures together.
I'll be sure to check it out. But yeah, no, that's it. Super interesting to hear that it seems to do well with tropical storm cyclones, and although I could say it makes sense, based on what Amy said earlier about it learns from the past, and hurricanes generally
Right.
tend to move in the same direction. You find a starting point and it's kind of has its own cone. So it makes sense, but still, interesting to hear. Um,
One of the other things we're evaluating in Extreme Weather Bench that is a completely different scale than that is we're trying to look at the severe weather potential and how well the models are looking at severe weather potential. Now, they can't, at the scale that these models are, they can't give you tornadoes, but they can give
right.
you severe days. And so we're working on evaluating that. And it's been pretty interesting so far because nobody's really talking about that yet.
Yeah, I mean, Matt can probably speak to it better than I can, but severe days, I think just knowing that there'll be a severe day is a step in the right direction at the very
right.
least.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's another one of the things that I'm just kind of contemplating in my head, like, well, where's this going in the future? And it's like I feel like now, like we've got our global, like the old waves, like you've got your global models, you've got your mesoscale models, you've got your convection, allowing models, but now you've got AI models, and there's so much flexibility built in. It's like Google's got their model and it works for hurricanes and it works pretty darn well. Now are we going to be able to have like all these different kind of like AI models that are trained on specific types of weather that like maybe we've got like an AI hail forecaster, like
Yes.
things like that, and so like we can get so into the weeds on things, it's you obviously don't want to be overwhelmed by data, but at the same time you'll find things that end up probably working and helping you
Yes.
with very specific types of events. I think that is fascinating to me.
So we actually have done hail casting. So on that note, and that one's a slightly different approach, right? So what we've been talking about all along has been these data-driven models. And when you asked me in the beginning about AI models, that's the other side. The other side is that these smaller ones tend to be more post-processing, because that's how they can get the smaller. And one of the advantages of AI that you can do there is you can ingest the numerical weather prediction models, and then you can in real time ingest observations. And so you can get an outcast. And we had one, I had a graduate student who finished recently, was working on hail nowcasting and whether or not he could get hail nowcasting up to about 30 minutes, from the 15 minutes that it is now, using lightning to see if you could improve the predictions. And he could do that. So that's really cool. And I don't know if you've heard about WAFScast, but WAFScast is also a direct. So GraphsCast is the Google model that's used, and then WAFScast is a direct data-driven model that's trying to reproduce WAFS, which is the warn on forecast system, which will do more on the like 0 to 3 hour scale. And they're trying to be able to give you the individual storm systems. It's a much higher resolution. There's lots of promise coming out in all of these. There's also HerCast, I believe, that just came out.
It's amazing. Like just the amount of flexibility that I think we're going to have to be able to use things like is just as a forecaster. It's like, wow, give me all the tools.
Right. Well, then you have more data overload, but yes.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
But
But you
hopefully it's
find the
good
stuff that
data.
works.
Yeah, I mean, it's all super fascinating, honestly, and um, we could talk about that for hours, but I gotta keep us on schedule. So moving on to the next question, and this is one that both we and our one of our students came up with individually. So definitely gonna make sure we hit this one. Um, how well will AI perform and adapt to climate change? Because we have a changing climate, and it's things that used to work 70 years ago don't quite work the exact same way, or don't work at all, or totally different. So how is AI going to be able to adapt to stuff like that?
It's it's an interesting question and one I get asked pretty much every time I do a panel or anything like that. And it's partly because people think that AI can't do extremes. I think AI can do extremes, but I, the answer that most of the models are taking right now, when I talked about training on ERA5 and the historical data, is they're trying to train as close to now as they can because the
Hmm.
distributions are shifting. So the physics still is the same, right? The physics of the world has not changed. Let me know if, F equals ma changes, but it's still there. So if you're learning that from history, that's okay. What's changing is the distributions of things. And so if you fine tune your model on the most recent history, then the hope is that we're going to get better at doing things as they shift. But I don't know that an NWP model or an AI model is going to be able to handle super well something that you've just never seen, something that's completely unprecedented. And I will bring to mind the heat wave in the Pacific Northwest a couple of years ago, because it was so unprecedented that even the numerical weather prediction models, this was before AFS and those were operational, but the numerical weather prediction models were giving things, but they weren't even as intense as it was going to be, right? And the human forecasters didn't believe it. How could it possibly be? What was it, 112 or something in the Pacific Northwest? It was
Something like
crazy,
that.
and so if you're going to ask the trustworthy question, did the AI models do well? They weren't running then, but like, could they have done it? I think retrospectively, people have done that, and they could have done it. But then you got to get the people to trust that they're about to do something that's real because it's so unprecedented. That might be the case for these cold snaps too, right? We're starting to see some really unprecedented cold snaps in the winter because the polar vortex is a little bit more unstable. And, well, is it really going to be this cold right now? The model says it is. I don't know if that gives you, the answer is we can't prove to you whether or not it's going to work really well, right? The answer is we're
Right.
doing the best we can with the distributions that we have by trying to train on the most recent data on the sort of fine tuning. But can you predict something you've never seen? Don't know.
I think that's a good answer, and I think that like that's one of the things about AI models I think is really interesting, and I think Amy brought up a good point, like people saying that like, well, no, they can't really predict extremes. Well, they've predicted some of the extreme weather that we've seen at times in the last couple of years, the short window that we've had to use it, and I mean to be quite honest, like if I see an AI model is going pretty toward the edge of what's realistic on something, I may actually, as long as it's got some support elsewhere, like I'm going to buy into it probably a lot faster. And to me, it's not like I don't worry so much about uh, AI models like giving me some hallucination 15 days out that's, going to be just completely dead wrong. Um, but clearly in that situation it's seeing something that has happened that would lead to something else that is potentially going to happen. And I think you have to give it some credibility in that situation a little bit more, and I think it's going to help us a little bit with extremes because the Pacific Northwest heat wave is the first thing that comes to mind, with like almost everything when you think about unprecedented stuff. So I'm glad you brought that up, and said that they could predict a bit of that, and that to understand going forward that if we see things, we're going to start to take notice. And I think we've seen that this year with tropical models in particular. They have been able to forecast. I think it was with Melissa, the Google DeepMind model at one point had every single ensemble member forecasting a Category 5 storm at some point. And
Before it was even anything, like
yeah.
while it was still a small storm, everybody was looking at it going, what's going on? Oh.
Exactly. And I mean, like you put 10 meteorologists around the data and you're looking at that, like, oh, it's going to travel over the highest ocean heat content. So yeah, it's probably going to rapidly intensify. But then you look at the spread of the models. I mean, it ranged from Cat 1 to, borderline Cat 5 from the traditional hurricane models that we use and some of the better ones too. So I think that that's a really important note to make is that, it is able to capture some of these extremes. And Melissa was as extreme as it gets. At one point, I think I even saw one of the ensemble members had like 100 and almost 180 knot winds. So I mean, like that's really never happened. So, at least in the Atlantic. So it picked up on it, and it turns out it was pretty darn close to right. Um, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but if we can get pretty doggone close, like that's a win.
Yeah, and I tend to agree, that I don't think anyone should expect a climate, an AI model dealing with climate change. We're not perfect. I don't think we should expect the AI model to be perfect either. It's as long as we're, I think, in the ballpark, basically,
Right.
and something Dave and I do with the subseasonal forecast a lot is, we've talked about how do you properly forecast a record warm or record cold period, and there really isn't a good answer, especially at that lead time. So, you just kind of have to, if there's support for it, if it's showing something crazy, you can't just dismiss it. So,
I
um,
would say the another answer to that is that the usual quote that all models are wrong, but some of them are useful.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
that's
that,
true.
in the beginning, people, and there's a lot of hype around AI right now. So,
Yeah,
the AI should be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. There is not
yeah,
a weather model out there that's perfect. And I don't expect AI to ever be perfect. It will be a useful model. And it might be
yeah.
better than some of the others. I think it already has proven that. But,
hmm
perfect. If it's going to solve weather forecasting, I will be surprised.
Right. Um, So continuing on with the questions, we have time for one more before we open it up to questions. She'll still try to get you guys out of here at 6:30. Um, so moving on to, we're doing this mainly for students in early careers. So the question on their minds, jobs. How will AI impact jobs and Amy, this one will be more for your side, academia and research. And Matt, you can handle this side with private and public sector. What's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI for students as we go forward. Whoops.
Go for it.
My
Didn't
monitor
move
went
enough.
off. My monitor went off, and it just, yeah, that but yeah, so go
The
ahead.
I would say that AI is going to be ubiquitous going forward. AI is going to be used for, since you asked for academia and research, it's going to be used for science and discovery. And it's a tool. And it will, I mean, I also do tool development, right? Because I'm doing the development of the methods, but you you can't proceed with ignoring AI at this point. I don't think any researcher can. And that's the same as it was I would have said 20 years ago, but I think the revolution came to meteorology a little later on just coding, right? How many meteorologists were originally trained on, oh, you can do everything on a paper map, you can do everything. If you do that now, you're not going to get a job anywhere. And you have to be able to code. Well, you also have to be able to use the AI tools. And I think you have to do that for research and for private industry. And I'm going to lead slightly into Matt's answer in that I'm doing consulting for a company right now, and that all the coding we do is also using AI tools, right? So if we want to do something, you can have the AI tools help you. You have to be comfortable with them too. Matt's turn.
Yep.
And I think that kind of segues into an interesting point, because it's like I am not a coder. I was not trained to be a coder. I was, we took I think we took C and Fortran when I was in school,
Oh, oh,
and yeah, real valuable now. Um, but of course, the jobs I got early in my career, I didn't need to do any coding, so any knowledge that I had just kind of was lost. But like you can like you're saying, you can use AI tools to help you code, even like to
right.
help teach you how to code. And if you have an interesting problem and you want to just kind of try to solve it, something like you're just sitting there and you've got this idea like, oh, I have this idea. I want to put this together. I want to compare this, and this. But I don't, it's like you have this assistant now that can do it with you. So it's not replacing you, right? It's helping you to speed up an answer to a question that maybe you have, or find a better way to get an answer to a question that you had, or at least a different way. I don't want to say necessarily better, but it opens your mind to different things and maybe different rabbit holes that you can go down. And rabbit holes can be the bane of your existence, but they can also help you be more creative in finding new things to do. So I think from a forecasting perspective, it's another tool in the arsenal. I think learning how to be better at prompting it is going to be very important. I think that goes for everyone. How do you prompt it the right way? Because I've seen what some of the Google searches are, and people sometimes are pretty lazy with how they Google search. And you can't necessarily be lazy with AI. You have to prompt it in a way that gets you an answer that is specific and focused on what you want it to do. But it's not like you can just all of a sudden, I think there's this kind of expectation, even among some people in the field, that we're going to have these AI models are going to run like every hour and it's just going to replace the forecaster. And that's it. There's your output. It's never going to do that. Like I could never trust a weather model to handle everything perfectly. And I mean, when you're working in an industry like, I work in the energy industry, where a couple degrees off a forecast high can mean several tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not going to just let a model, plug and chug and just walk away. So it's just going to be another tool that you have to learn how to use to help. But then you're also going to have the idea of using AI to help supplement the work that you do day to day, and be more creative. Like I'm really excited about it as not a coder, that maybe I can start to come up with some stuff that I've always thought about, but like, man, like I got to go through and sit through a semester of coding class to do it, which I think it sounds horrible. And it sounds like this is like the easy way out, but at the same time, that's the reality that we're in right now. And it's not to say that that's the right way to go about it, but for someone that's got 20 years of experience under their belt and hasn't always kept up with everything that they could, that's a huge help. So, I think that you just have to be willing to adopt it. And um, just based on the people that I've talked to, and I think it's still sort of mixed, surprisingly. I'm not, I would have expected everyone to be like, I'm jumping in with 2 feet on this stuff. Like, I think it's great, it's useful, it's helpful, it's going to make our jobs more complicated, but also easier, in a lot of different ways, and all for the better, in my opinion.
One of the things that it does is make you not have to learn the esoterics of the APIs of the really,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So,
Matplotlib comes to mind on that. And
uh,
and pandas. I've been doing a lot of pandas and Matplotlib lately to make plots, and it's like you can ask the AI and it will make you a pretty plot.
Yes.
all right. Thank you. Now, Dave, we're going to open up to questions from the audience. So if there's any questions, Dave or Mia, or I believe Dr. Decker, you mentioned was there as well. If anybody has any questions, feel free to, Dave, turn your camera back on and throw them forward.
Hey guys. Yeah, no, this is great. And I know we had a little technical difficulties earlier. If you guys don't mind staying a little bit longer. I do want to, there was one other question that was sort of related to what Michael just asked. Um, and if we could get this out for you guys, and Matt, you covered it a little bit, but like what advice, right? Do you have, we know it's no one can has a crystal ball, but what advice do you have for, folks who are graduating soon, early career folks, in terms of how they can best prepare, adapt to this changing landscape?
My answer is going to be learn to be comfortable with the AI. And it isn't just learn to use Claude or, you know, ChatGPT or things like that. You need to understand what it's doing. You need to understand its limitations. Um, so it depends on sort of my advice on that part will depend on who's using it, right? So a new graduate that's going to go out and work in industry versus somebody who's going to go into research. I think the ones who are going into research really need to dig deeply into the methods and take a machine learning class and understand what's going on in them. Because I think that that's important to using them ethically and responsibly. So the grads who are going to go to industry learn how to use the tools and learn what they're good at and learn what they're not good at too, right? You don't want to misrepresent yourself. I am allowing students to use the tools in limited ways in class, right? They can't write their essays for them, but they can use the tools to help them do the things that they're going to be doing in the industry anyway.
Yeah, and I think that this is that's a really great answer. Like it's there. Like why would you not be able to use it, right? You're gonna be able to use it. And yes, you have to understand the underlying science and basics of the field that you're going into because that's just important. It's important to know that stuff. So that's going to stay, but now you've got additional tools that you get to learn about. I think the real important lesson from this is the world is changing quickly, and you have to be willing to adapt
Yes.
as it changes. It's like I could sit here 20 years into my career and be like, well, I've done it always this way and I haven't had any problems, so I'm just going to keep doing it that way, and that's that. Like, no, that wouldn't. Why would I do that? Um, there's always a better way. There's always a new way. There's always something to try and to find a way to incorporate into your day to day. And I think that really going into a field, especially now with the way things are rapidly evolving, you just have to approach everything with an open mind, and just recognize that even in some cases the way you were taught to do things may not be the way that you end up doing them. And that's why on the job learning, like starting your first couple of years of your career is like getting a master's degree as it is, right? Because you're learning so much that you were not taught in school, about how to use some of the things that you were learning in school. It's like you've got all this knowledge now. How do I apply it? And that's what those first few years are. And now you've just got to be willing to take it with an open mind, because it's moving quick, and you don't want to be left behind.
That's for sure. I have one or two more questions, but does anyone else here have a question they want to shout out? Yeah, we got one. Dr. Decker.
Can't hear.
Oh, we can't hear. Can you? Yeah, sure, sure. Okay, did you catch that?
No.
Didn't hear a word of it.
Post-processing was mentioned earlier, and we're wondering, is that going to be useful in improving the blended national blended models?
Yes. You want more in depth? I mean, the NVM is already doing some AI under the hood. It's doing statistics and other, it's been doing linear regression in there for a very long time, and that is while not deep learning, still AI method. Although statistics likes to claim it too. Um, but but yeah, I mean, I think that the coming up with an ensemble of ensembles is certainly something that is easily within AI's wheelhouse. Matt didn't like that.
Oh no, I love that. Give me the ensemble of ensembles.
Ensembles.
That's one thing that I'm extremely interested in.
And if I could piggyback, you guys talked, about performance, and I know you're coming out with some more stuff here too, but I'm fascinated by that. Can you give a little bit more? Two-part question. like in say the first, I don't know, 10 to 15 days of a forecast, and just think about temperature. I think I've seen something like in the books, like every 10 years we gain like an extra forecast day plus or minus. Like, like if nothing changed, day 5 would have the same accuracy as day 6, 10 years from now or something. And so, Amy and Matt, can you talk a little bit more in terms of in that range? How you said we think we'll see improvement. Is it exponential? Is it slight? Will we gain an extra day? Is it incremental? Can you try to provide any more context just for the, listener in terms of what you're guessing we'll see with AI, at least in the next 5, 10 years? And then second question, if I can, we didn't talk too much about seasonal. But where do you guys see, if at all, these AI in the next 5, 10 years advancing, let's say, the Holy Grail, like 6 month winter forecast or something like that? Where do you see that kind of, or what level of improvement do you see there?
You like to throw hard questions at us. The the first one, I don't think we have a AI has not been the global AI models haven't been around long enough to be able to say they're going to double every, improve in accuracy by a degree every so many years. But I think the answer is they've been around long enough to say that it's going to be faster than 10 years. But there's also going to be a limit. I mean, we reached a limit with the physics-based model, not a limit, but we were leveling out on our improvement with the physics-based models. And so the AI is not magic and it's not going to solve everything, right? So we're going to see here's my prediction. We're going to see some good improvements for a while, and then we're going to start to level out again. We're going to hit some limits, and then there'll be new AI methods developed. Uh, the other one, seasonal. I don't tread into seasonal much. I think that seasonal's hard, and I think that that level of forecasting, I think those fit into what I said, that I think that the 5 to 10 year range AI is going to be able to improve on. Is it going to be super scaled? No, but right now there isn't anything at that scale. You can really just do long-term trends of like what the Climate Prediction Center puts out, and they're not at that scale, that 6 month scale. So I think we can get some nudging to the models, and that will be the first improvement. But like the long term, like it's going to snow this many times that you get from the Farmer's Almanac is not going to happen from AI. Maybe not ever. I don't mean that. You're asking 5 to 10 years. I don't know what ever is going to be, because if we make this AGI things, who knows?
Yeah, fair. And is that one of the other things related? Again, won't get too deep, but like we were thinking about like we learned back in school, right? About the chaos theory, Ed Lorentz. We that the numerical guidance was always going to have some finite, some plateau. In part, there were a few different things, but the ones I remember, we have a limited observation network. We don't have observations everywhere. And we have an imperfect observation network, right? Some of the equipment far worse than others. So again, do you see is AI gonna be also limited by those same things? And I guess B, and I thought I heard something about this somewhere, but that AI may actually try to like work to fill in those gaps or improve that observation network to feed back on the forecast. Can you talk about any of those things?
Yes, AI is still limited, but one of the things that you're starting to see from a couple of companies is AI data assimilation. So instead of in the beginning, everybody was training on ERA5 because that was the gridded data set and it was globally available. But there are limitations to ERA5. And now people are starting to look at the question of, can they train directly from the observations and can they learn from the observations? So I think that's going to give us a jump in improvement. But is it magic? No, you're still not going to be able to get data where you just don't have data. The global south is woefully under censored, and the ocean is woefully under censored, more so than the global south. And we kind of need the ocean to do these long-term scales that we're talking about, right? Like we really desperately need to know what the ocean is doing in order to break the seasonality barriers. So we're not going to be able to solve that with just magic. AI is not magic. It can only do what it has. I think there was another half to the question, and I think I lost it.
No, that's great. And if Matt, if I could turn to you for a second here, you said something that was a pleasant surprise, I think probably to everyone here, related to jobs and that you think this is really going to be all positive. I think something like that you said in terms of the impact, on our field. I think everyone here wants, if you don't mind, can you expand on that? Because I'll speak for myself, but I think a lot of people feel this way. There's anxiety, right? There's anxiety in all kinds of forms. Again, academia, research, operational meteorologists, folks like you and me. So yeah, I'd love just to hear kind of like how do you envision things evolving here, again, especially for these young students and stuff over the next 3, 5 years.
Yeah, I think I maybe I'm too optimistic. I don't know. I
We love
wait,
it. We love it. Keep it good.
keep the optimism going. No, but it's like, I heard sort of the same things coming into this. Like, okay, well, do we think that this is going to be a replacement for humans at some point? Are we just going to automate everything to death and that's going to be that? And just as, I don't want to say that there won't be areas that will be impacted by. There will be. There will certainly be some areas where there will be things that kind of be that are automated and AI helps with, and just kind of takes the human out of the equation completely. But I don't necessarily think that that is going to just completely slam every door shut. Like I think what that ends up doing is it opens up new avenues for humans to focus their attention on going down different things. Like I really think like a lot of the mundane stuff, the stuff that kind of holds you back from being productive day to day, that's going to be where you get a lot of the help from, and it allows you to actually focus on like being creative and like jokingly and I don't know how it is everywhere, but like jokingly we always say like, oh, I added value today by doing something like that. That's always what you want to do when you're working in the private sector. I want to add value. Um, and the reality is that like this actually gives you more, I think, freedom to add value in ways that, maybe we don't even know right now, how we can do things. So I think that I'm very bullish on what it means for us. I think it also helps, particularly if you want to get into forecasting. Being a better communicator because I think it's going to force you to have to explain things, explain what you're seeing, explain why things are happening. And you become I don't want to say it takes like the mundane parts of forecasting away because all forecasting to me is interesting, but there's certain elements of it day to day that like, I don't necessarily want to spend a half hour, 20 minutes trying to focus on tomorrow's high temperature for a specific point in, my area. I want to be able to focus on other things. And so I think it kind of gives you that freedom to be able to do that and to be able to explain and communicate different things as well, because you're going to have so much data that you're going to have to translate. Somebody's got to translate it all. Somebody's got to be able to explain what it actually means to whoever's using it. If it's a business, if it's someone that's using your research, no matter what, you still have to be able to explain it and what it means. And I think that that's going to be kind of where, we see a lot, maybe we see more change in kind of like curriculum a little bit more. And some of the things is like you have to be able to talk and write in a way that explains things clearly, because that's just going to be, necessary to stand out going forward, I think.
Great. Thank you. Um, let's see, Michael, before I turn over to you for closing remarks, does anyone else have any questions? All right, and I love that. We should leave on a high note anyway, with Matt's optimism about where this is going. That's good. In fairness, I'll just chime in. I know everything's different, and you can't always compare things to the past. But we did hear some similar things, during over the past 10, 15 years with the cloud computing boom and the cheap data, right, that we saw. But it ended up being very good for meteorologists, right? It opened up the doors for a lot of small startup weather companies that could compete and add value to your point. And so it created all kinds of new jobs and opportunities. So, there is that, right? From the not too distant past, which, hopefully will be something, that might repeat itself in maybe a little bit of a different way, but still in a positive direction. So we'll take that. But Michael, we'll turn it over to you here to take us home.
All right, and as Dave's already alluded to, that's all the time we have for the discussion today. So I'd like to thank you both once again, Amy, Matt, for participating in today's discussion. You both provided some really, really fascinating, excellent insight into what is honestly a super, super complicated and there's so many different angles and branches to this topic that, you know, we could be here for hours and still not even scratch the surface, I feel like. So, thank you again, both of you, for being a part of this. And if we ever maybe revisit this sometime in the future, we'd love to have you both back. Schedules permitting, of course. Um, so we'll also be as we mentioned earlier, we'll also be posting the recording to our various outreach areas. If you want to see it, watch it again. For anyone that wants to see it on the internet. And thanks everyone for watching.